Welcome to the mbaMission podcast, where every week we discuss different MBA application components and give our expert guidance on everything business school admissions related.
Hi, this is Harold Simansky here with the mbaMission podcast. I'm here with my colleague Debbie Choy, who is a managing director here at mbaMission. Hi, Debbie.
Hello, Harold. Good to see you.
Nice to see you as well. Debbie, we're here today to talk a little bit about school selection. And let's start off with how you yourself chose the school that you attended. As many people may know, you attended Stanford. And if I remember correctly, that was a little bit of, can I say, surprise when you decided to go there, or unexpected when you decided to go there?
Yeah, definitely. And I applied to a variety of schools. I, had research schools and really felt that, these were fantastic programs. I couldn't choose. So I was like, I'm just going to apply to as many schools as I can and, see what I get into. And Stanford was certainly a school that was really impressive, but also really intimidating. And, the acceptance rates were so low. It was so selective. And I almost did not apply because, I didn't think that I would get in. I had a mentor at work at that time who was a GSB grad, and she was incredibly encouraging and supportive. And she said, I think actually you would be a good fit for the school. Why not give it a shot? So with her encouragement, I submitted my application to the GSB. I was truly surprised and honored when I was offered a spot.
Okay. No, listen, I can understand that. Obviously, great school. We frequently have a lot of our clients applying. As you think back, was there any one thing in your application that really stood out that made GSB very interested in you?
Yeah, and I will tell you that the first day I arrived on campus, my classmates and I looked at each other and we were just pinching ourselves because we just, didn't know why we were chosen out of, all of these other very qualified friends and colleagues that we know who applied as well. But I think that one thing we all have in common as we started talking was just being really authentic in the way that we presented our stories in the applications and the essays and the interviews. And I think that is a big part of what the school is looking for and what it's trying to surface from its essay questions.
Yeah, what I found about the GSB, particularly with my own clients, is that there always feels like just a touch of randomness to it. I mean, frequently I'll have folks who seem so perfect for the GSB and they don't get in. And they have folks who I don't want to say had some hesitation with, but I was a little surprised, I'll say, when they do get in. Is there anything in particular you think that there's something about the GSB that it lends itself to very different types of people? Is that it?
That's a very good question, Harold. And I wish that I had the answer. I think it would make our lives, our jobs a lot easier. But I think that what we are missing from this side of the table is who else is applying that year.
Right.
As we know, the school admissions committee is trying to put together a diverse class. And it's just really hard to know, who else with a similar profile might be applying that year. And I think that's something that I try to convey to my clients as well, is that they may, do everything right. They may have a terrific profile, but there just may be, something else at play in the larger picture that we are not privy to on this side of the table.
No, that makes sense. That makes sense then. So like you, I have many clients who come to me with, I want to apply to Stanford. Stanford's for me. And what I'll frequently tell them is, if Stanford's your dream school, by all means apply. But at the same point, you have to think about other schools you'd be happy with. So when a client comes to you, maybe committed to Stanford, but really wants to go to business school, how do you help them think about school selection?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that's a great exercise that every applicant should go through because, we all have our dream schools, but in the event that it doesn't pan out, what is our plan B? And there are a lot of really great schools that would, deliver the same well-rounded business education and, network and so on. And I encourage them to think about the factors that are most important to them. What are their goals that they want to get out of 2 years at business school and even through their career?
Yes.
One big factor is the geography. A lot of people, don't actually pay enough attention to that. I think that where you want to build your career long term is important because the school's alumni network tends to be strongest
Yep.
in the region that it's based.
Yes.
So, I have folks who are wanting to build their career in Europe,
Yep.
and I would, certainly encourage them to think about, if they want to come to school in the U.S., think about a school that has a more international alumni
Yes.
base, has a brand in Europe that, their future employers are going to know. So, that's one factor, to
De-
consider. Yeah, go
Debbie,
ahead.
let's just play a little game like that. So, as you think
Yeah.
about schools that have European or international footprints, are there any schools that particularly come to mind?
Yeah, I think a lot of the East Coast schools are very
Yeah.
strong, have very strong connection with Europe. It's
Yeah.
closer to Europe. MIT, HBS,
Yeah.
Columbia,
Yeah.
very large cosmopolitan cities.
Correct.
Wharton,
Yeah.
obviously. So yeah, I can rattle off a list, but
Right. Right.
certainly
Right.
when you look at the East Coast
Yeah.
schools near big cities, those are a good bet.
Yep. No, that makes sense. So geography certainly plays into the school selection decision. What other factors do you have people keep in mind?
Yeah. So another factor is what type of industry they want to enter
Well,
post MBA. Yeah, there are certain industries that have stronger connections. So, for example, if somebody tells me, "Look, I want to go into the energy industry," well, let's look at some schools, maybe UT Austin, maybe
yeah.
Rice,
Yes.
in Texas that have traditionally those strong connection to the energy sector. Now, and then there may be students that say, I really want, I've built my career in industrials and manufacturing. I
Well,
really want to join, a company like that. Well, let's take a look at schools that may have a stronger connection with manufacturing. Maybe Carnegie Mellon, right?
yes.
Maybe some of the Midwestern schools. So the industry that you want to build your career in also plays an important factor.
No, no, that makes sense then. And it's my understanding Stanford teaches in many different ways. Case, sort of general, I guess you'd call them, outside the classroom, that sort of thing. And if I'm someone who comes to you and says, "Listen, I'm not so committed to case method," are there
Yeah.
schools at that point that really speak to you, or schools that maybe are a little bit off the beaten path that you really would have people consider?
Yeah. So the two schools that are really famous for, using 100%, if not 90%, case method would be HBS and Darden.
Yep.
And I think most other schools will use a combination of case and lecture and, experiential hands-on, right?
Yep.
So I think that it's actually easier if you
Okay.
are somebody who's not committed to the case method.
Right.
That being said, I don't actually have a lot of applicants come to me say, I only want to go to a case method school,
Yeah.
because that really narrows down their choices. And I think giving the professors that freedom to structure that, whether to use a case method or a lecture or something else, is really a good idea. So you really get that best teaching method for what they're trying to convey.
No, that makes sense. And Stanford has always been considered this super entrepreneurial school, meaning sort of every graduate, if they haven't started a company while they're students, they actually start a company right after they leave school. Was that your experience, or was it a more diverse student body?
Good question. And I think that's a little bit of a myth. So I, kind of want to bust that myth.
Yeah.
When I was there, there's certainly, a segment of my classmates who had started companies or were starting companies even during school and working on their business idea. But a large portion of us were, just going into regular consulting, banking, or finance, or industry. So I wouldn't say that dominated the
Yep.
culture when I was there. And certainly from what I am seeing now in their employment reports and what I'm hearing from clients who are going through the experience, that's also not the case. So, I think it's a little bit of a myth that, to be accepted into Stanford, you have to either have started your own company or want to start your own company. Actually, a lot of people do go into, kind of the traditional business school industries.
No, that makes sense then. I've always been surprised and impressed in terms of what I find in the employment report, because sometimes honestly it can be a real myth buster with the notion here, Kellogg being marketing or brand management. In actual fact, you just don't see that many people who are going to marketing or brand management. Or from that perspective, even Wharton being a finance school, well, people are doing a lot more than finance.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. Are there, again, you probably have a lot of people who choose to work with you because they want to go to Stanford. They want that entrepreneurial vibe. Are there, and always we need to temper people's expectations. Yeah. If they come to you with sort of that story, what other schools do you suggest that they consider as well?
Good question. There are actually a lot of schools since the whole, that technology has just grown and everybody is interested in startup programs now. All of the top 10, if not the top 15 schools have invested heavily in having their own entrepreneurial programs and courses. A really good one to consider is Wharton. And I've read in newspaper articles that Wharton actually sends more graduates to Silicon Valley every year than Stanford does.
Oh, is that right? Wow.
Yeah. Because of, Wharton is a much bigger class. So, numbers wise, I would say Wharton is a really good program to look at, not just because of the entrepreneurial program, but, if you decide, okay, I want to do a startup in real estate. Gosh, you are looking at an intersection between entrepreneur program and real estate. Then Wharton also has incredible resources in a lot of other disciplines. So that's a good program to look into. And of course, Harvard, also has a fantastic program. Outside of that, you can also look at a school like Columbia. There's a community in New York City called Silicon Alley. They're very plugged into that. There's also UT Austin. A lot of tech companies have been migrating from the Bay Area to Austin. So that's another good program. I also want to give a shout out again to Carnegie Mellon. So the Pittsburgh startup scene, super vibrant. And then, of course, not to forget the Chicago schools, Kellogg and Booth have also invested heavily in those programs.
Right. No, that makes sense. I've always been really impressed with Carnegie Mellon with Tepper. Because all of the top tech companies there, Amazon, in Pittsburgh, Amazon is in Pittsburgh, Meta is in Pittsburgh, Uber's in Pittsburgh, and more than just Uber drivers. The actual company, the actual company is there, definitely. And the reality, though, for Debbie is Stanford just feels so hard. And I think part of it has to do with that really difficult essay, which it's sort of funny. We all do a lot of Stanford essays. And I found it a very hard essay to help people with, but also very valuable for other applications, just getting your head around it. How do you, and just remind everyone, the classic central question for Stanford is what matters most to you and why. It can be very intimidating, very open. How do you work with your clients as far as crafting the right answer for that? What does a strong Stanford essay actually look like? How is it different? That sort of thing.
Things that I try to use with my clients. The first is never start with that essay. Never let that be the first essay you write for a business school. In fact, if somebody comes to me and says, I'm only applying to Stanford, I have them start writing the second essay first. So the second essay of why Stanford is more straightforward, is about your career goals and how a Stanford MBA will help you. So start writing that essay first before you get to what matters most. Or better yet, if you're applying to other schools, which I strongly encourage them to do, start with the other schools first. Now, the second thing then is to keep peeling back the onion as you think about your answer to what matters most to me. The first thing I have my clients do is to complete this sentence for me. What matters most to me is, And I
Okay.
really want them to fit their answer into one sentence.
Right.
Because
Right.
if they can't do that, then, we need to try to tighten that up and really crystallize their idea. So that's the first thing I try to let them, take a stab at. And then once we have that, we start peeling back the onion to ask why. So, for instance, if somebody tells me what matters most to me is my family, why is that important? Let's peel back the onion. Let's dig a little bit deeper. If they give me an answer, I ask them again, why? Why is that important? Right. So I keep asking why until we really, try to get to the root, the core of what it is that really is important to them.
No, that makes sense. Absolutely. And Debbie, let me even roll it back a little bit more. You have somebody who says to you, let's say their GMAT is done. Let's say it's about May 1st, and they say, I want to apply to business school. They haven't even done more than that. How do people even get started at that point?
So May 1st is a really good timeline to start.
Yeah.
I definitely have clients coming to me much later. Now, the first thing to do is to think about the school selection and try to narrow it down a little bit. So some folks might have, a list of 5-6 schools that they are interested in. Now, I think that applying to 4, 5, or even 6 schools for the first round, for any one round, is quite doable, provided that they start ahead of time. And May 1st, definitely plenty of time to tackle, let's say 5 schools. And I also encourage them to think about the 2 rounds as opposed to just focusing on 1 round. And round 2 could be a good round for them if they don't get the results they want. Let's say they get waitlisted. Think about what could be 2 or 3 schools that they might be interested in applying to in round 2. So we think about that strategy, which round for which school, and then we also look at the timing of the deadlines. And usually around May 1st, schools are just starting to release their essays and their timelines, but we usually get a good sense for what that timeline is, or the deadlines, depending on, what their last year's deadline was. So we get a sense for, okay, maybe, we know that usually Harvard is super early, Wharton and Harvard are right after Labor Day. So we maybe want to tackle those schools first. So we come up with that cadence, that, action plan, and then we want to get started on the brainstorming process. So that's where they are going through that self-reflection process, asking themselves a lot of deep questions, thinking about their key personal and professional stories. Ideally, they're writing this down as well so that they can, go back and reflect, or if they're working with a consultant, share that with their consultant so that their consultant really starts to get to know them, their stories, their strengths and weaknesses. So that's the next part of the process that then allows them to get started on picking the stories, crafting that narrative for the essays. And then, after they get started on that, they start drafting the essays and editing the essays. And that's a big part of the work that we do.
Yes. It sure is. And Debbie, how long should people think about working on MBA applications for? Is it, an hour, a day, a week, a month, 2 months, 3 months? What sort of general timeline do you give most of your clients?
Yeah, good question. And I try to tell my clients to set aside 8 to 12 hours a week. Now, whether they do a couple of hours a day or, a full Saturday or Sunday, that's okay. It's up to their work schedule, but they want to keep making that continuous progress. Now, keep in mind, a lot of my clients are also still in the process of taking their tests, their GMAT, GRE, or retaking it. So they have to layer that on top of the 8 to 12 hours, however number of hours they need for studying. So it does add up to be quite significant. And most of my clients tell me that is, a second job almost.
Yes, definitely.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, definitely.
Now, in terms of how early they should they start 2, 3, 4, 6 months in advance. A lot of times we're looking at 2 to 3 months in advance of the deadlines. Is plenty of time. provided that they're able to, of course, manage their time efficiently. And, just taking a look at the round one start, right?
Yep.
So
Yep.
Usually the deadlines are in September,
Yep.
But the schools don't usually release their new essay questions until, late May, early June.
Yep.
This year, we even had a slightly later start.
Yes.
So everybody's starting at the same starting line, which is
Right.
great. It means that, nobody really has a head start. Yeah.
Right. No, that absolutely makes sense. And Debbie, just as we're finishing up here, and I'm going to put you on the spot a little bit, do you have one key piece of advice for people who are applying to business school now?
Oh, gosh. I have so many pieces of advice.
Yeah. You can have two then.
I would say the one important thing is really to get organized.
Yep.
There are so many moving pieces
Yep.
that you really, if you're not organized, if you're not thinking about, okay, what do I tackle first? What do I do next? Then it can get really overwhelming. And the second piece of advice I would say is to try to be authentic, in the sense of knowing what your true north is.
Yeah.
And there's a lot of information and misinformation out there.
Yeah.
A lot of, information on websites, forums, and also your friends and colleagues who are, really trying to help. And a lot of this advice may be conflicting, or it may not be, authentic to who you are. So
Nice.
I think having that strong filter, whether it's, a sounding board that you have in the form of a consultant, or, someone who knows you very well and can keep you grounded, keep you
Yes.
to your true north.
Yeah.
I think that is super important in guiding you towards that goal. So that would be the two pieces of advice. It's easier said than done.
Right. Of course. Great, Debbie. Debbie, thank you very much for joining us today. And for those of you who want to speak to Debbie, maybe spend 30 minutes on a call with her, you can do that by going to the mbaMission website and signing up for a free consult. And you can choose Debbie, you can choose me, or you can choose any one of our other about 25 or so consultants. This is Harold Simansky with the mbaMission podcast, and hopefully you will be listening with us again soon.
Thanks for listening to the mbaMission podcast. Be sure to like, share, and subscribe wherever you get your favorite podcasts so you don't miss an episode. We wish you the best of luck with your MBA applications and look forward to helping you on your journey to business school.